Love. Some would say it took a backseat when the pandemic forced us apart. As a family-run and proudly Canadian-owned company, Charm Diamond Centers saw the need to bring us together with tales of love and created the Canadian Love Map podcast. Since then, we've shared hundreds of real, uplifting stories that prove love conquers all. So thank you for listening. We couldn't do it without you. And remember, love starts here. What the world needs now is love. More love.
Stars literally aligned.
He's always been the one.
There's someone out there for everyone.
I'm Nancy Regan, your host on the Canadian Love Map. We are on a journey to uncover and share love stories of all kinds.
He's never forgotten to bring me flowers.
We're hoping we're going to give a little good news to this world.
Even in these dark times, the life continues to go on.
It's all about compassion, devotion, adventure, and of course, love.
Everybody needs somebody. Everybody needs love.
This is the Canadian Love Map.
Well, love is the most important thing.
And that just became my total focus, that these children deserved better than they currently had, and what were the steps to make that happen.
Mm-hmm. So Mary Jane really was the glue that kept our family together.
Today's love story belongs to Mary Jane from Nova Scotia and Natasha from Los Angeles, two self-described best friends whose relationship started when a 23-year-old MJ married 12-year-old Natasha's divorced father. The marriage didn't last, but the close and unconventional friendship between these two women has lasted over 40 years. Despite living on opposite coasts, they've forged a connection that feels like they're just 2 steps away. This is the Canadian Love Map. Natasha and Mary Jane, I'm thrilled to have you with me, and I want to make sure the listeners know that Mary Jane is with me in the studio, and Natasha is out in La La Land.
Yes, California. Mm-hmm.
Tell us about where we're finding you today, Natasha.
Well, I'm in Santa Clarita, which is still in LA County. It's better known for Magic Mountain Six Flags, but it's in sunny Southern California.
And we're going to get into your interesting, perhaps somewhat unique relationship. Mm-hmm. But why don't you tell us first, sort of set the stage and tell me why you're in Southern California?
So my husband is in IT, and he was always looking for the best opportunity possible. It took us from Canada to the States and then to the Caribbean, Grand Cayman, and then back to Canada and now to California. Unlike in the past where we stayed in jobs for a long time, he moved, I'd say, every 4 to 5 years, looking for something better and achieving that. And so now we have our green card, which was very coveted. No one needs to tell us to leave every year or every 3 years. So we're thrilled to be able to make our choices to live where we want to live.
And you're doing your own cool thing there.
I am. I'm in voiceover. I'm a voice actor, thus the booth here. And voice acting is something that you can do from anywhere. It's an at-home business, and I send the files, the MP3s or the WAV files, by email, and it's a fantastic thing to do and also stay at home while you're raising your kids.
Yes, and it's easier now than ever.
Absolutely.
It's just grown in leaps and bounds in terms of the ease with which you can do it in the past 5 years even. Okay, so Mary Jane.
Yes.
Or MJ, which do you prefer?
Either one, whatever's comfortable for you, Nancy.
Now that we've set the scene a little bit in California, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself here, outside of your relationship with Natasha?
Well, I will be celebrating, I think, 26 or 27 years in Halifax this summer. And I have been an entrepreneur since 1987. And currently known as the phone lady for the last 18 years. I train people how to communicate effectively on the phone.
Oh, That is good. Well, you'd better be good on the microphone today then.
I hope so.
Walk the talk, talk the walk.
Well, and
like
I've got you and Natasha here. I don't know if I'll keep up, but I'll do my best.
I have no doubt at all. I have great faith in you. How did you two meet? Oh, I love throwing that question out to you because I've asked so many people in this podcast, but your answers, I anticipate, are going to be quite different than most others.
I'm anticipating that they're going to be different from each other's too. Do you want me to go first?
Yes,
Natasha?
please.
Okay. So I fell in love with Natasha's father, and I was 23, and he was divorced from Natasha's mom, and he lived in Toronto and they lived in Ottawa. And it was complicated because Natasha's mom had a new partner. He didn't allow Natasha's father to come into the house, so it was complicated. So we would drive down from Toronto to Ottawa in one day. And the very first time I went with him, I still remember we had a red Honda Civic. And Natasha has a younger sister, Nina, and the two girls ran out of the house with artwork and homework and stuff and got in the car and lots of chatter. And then we went to a restaurant, and then we went to the movies, and then we're going back to the car, and then we dropped them off and everything's in the car. And it just felt wrong to me. These two lovely young children interacting with their dad from either the front or back seat of a Honda Civic. It just didn't feel good at all. So when we got back to Toronto, I wrote a letter to their mom and talked about a lot of things, but basically I started to establish a relationship with her. And eventually, over the years, the girls would be able to come and have Christmas with us and March break and summer vacation. And Natasha and I grew very close. I don't think it took us very long, Natasha, to say that we were kindred spirits.
No. Very quick, very quick.
So how old were you that day, Natasha, when you climbed into the car?
I was only 12. I think I was, I was 12.
Well, I'm going to bounce back to Mary Jane then and ask, what was the reaction from your perspective of the girls to your presence? Did they already know about you? This was the first time they were meeting you?
It was the first time they were meeting me, and I assume that their dad told them I was coming, and that he had a girlfriend in the picture, that kind of thing. And they warmed up almost right away. I think the restaurant was a bit awkward, but by the time the movie finished, I think we were pretty close to being a unit. And then it just grew from there, and it was always, I think, pretty easy.
You were young, though. You were just 23.
Yeah, there's only 12 years between us.
So you were sort of more in the babysitting zone age for a 12-year-old.
Their father might say that.
Sorry, I don't mean to be judgmental. I'm just making an observation about how close your ages were.
Yeah, I mean, it felt big at the time. It certainly doesn't now, and hasn't for quite some time, right?
Yeah. Well, now that we're older, 23 seems very, very young. But at the time, you seemed like a legit adult, like everyone else was an adult. You were an adult as well in my world.
What do you remember about your first impressions? I know, Natasha, you say you don't necessarily remember that exact occasion, but what were your impressions of this new woman in your dad's life?
Well, if you haven't noticed already, Mary Jane is a lovely, lovely person.
Fabulous.
So very difficult to not like her. And she's set this stage already to tell you a little bit about the animosity within the divorce and whatnot. We were living with a stepfather who I did not like. So Mary Jane made it very, very easy. We did things that were fun. And I grew up in a family that didn't honor children, and she honored us. We were to be seen and not heard. And when it was time to be picked up by Mary Jane and my dad, we did fun things. We went to have pizza and play hopscotch and just do playful things that we didn't really do in our day-to-day lives. So Mary Jane made it, the moral of the whole story, we could probably end the podcast here, is that she's a lovely person. And it was really easy because she was so proactive and she's so lovely.
If you're trying to cut us off here, nice try. We're going deeper. We're going to go further.
Thank you, Natasha.
Points for effort, though, Natasha.
Yeah.
And also for the lovely compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I from experience, I know that the new partner's willingness to accept the family structure that was already in place plays a huge role in how well you move forward. Mm-hmm. Would you say that was true in your case?
Absolutely. And I mean, as things progressed, the individual Natasha's mother was living with when I met the girls moved out of her life. And I worked really hard to create family there. So eventually we were able to go down and stay with Natasha's mom and go out for dinner, the 5 of us, as a family unit. And that really made a difference, I think, Natasha, in terms of just creating some stability and a sense of family.
Yeah, again, Mary Jane, credit to Mary Jane, because she made it easy to get along with my mother. She made it easy for my mom and for us kids and for my father to get along with everyone. So it's really key. Who is that person that's coming into the family? Are they lovely, or are they not so much? So, I mean, it's a credit to her that it was able to be cohesive, because prior to that, well, my mother and father were divorced for a reason. So, getting along would have been tumultuous, not to mention the addition of her partner. Mm-hmm. So Mary Jane really was the glue that kept our family together, especially, I mean, I was 12. My sister, I guess, was 8. And so then I'm moving into the teen years. It has to be a pretty stellar person that can help bring a family together, I would think.
Mm-hmm. And especially to keep that seamless feeling of family. Yeah. But Mary Jane, a lot of women or men in that situation would, especially going to stay with the previous partner and so on, have a lot of jealousy sort of coloring their experience. How were you with that? Did that just not exist for you?
It didn't exist for me. My focus really was these 2 lovely girls. Mm-hmm. And really, when I met them, feeling their sadness, maybe their confusion, their desire to spend time with their dad outside the Honda Civic. Mm-hmm. And that just became my total focus, that these children deserved better than they currently had, and what were the steps to make that happen.
And you really made an effort to befriend Natasha's mom.
Absolutely.
And she was accepting of that.
She was. Yes, we still are friends.
See, that takes a lot of variables to line up in order, really. And I know of what I speak because I have an excellent husband. And his wife, I call my stepwife, and she has helped raise my children. And I have truth bumps as I say it. They're
lovely.
Some of the most important people in my life.
That's so
and
lovely.
We have a big blended extended family. My daughter considers their son her brother, and all of them are considered brothers and sisters. So,
and I am keeping husband. Now that is perfect.
I never like to say the term ex-husband because it seems very harsh, and often the feelings that go along with the term are appropriately harsh, I guess, but not in my case.
I love that.
And so I would always be sort of talking around it, saying my boy's dad, and so on. Anyway, yes, you can keep husband.
Thank
you. For anyone out there, I give you full license. I think it's a term we should all embrace.
I love it.
For what it represents. Yeah. So where did the relationship go from there between the 2 of you?
Well, Mary Jane was very tenacious and so supportive. And so I moved from Ottawa to Toronto, aside from the summers, visiting in the summers and March breaks and whatnot. I went to Ryerson when it was called Ryerson for college, and Mary Jane encouraged me to live with them, but she encouraged the relationship, even though I lived with them so very briefly. She encouraged the relationship, and that I think is an unusual skill, even within families where people pick up the phone and stay in touch. Mary Jane is a master at staying in touch. And then she would help me through a lot of conundrums. Let's just call them that. Through high school, college, and beyond, I knew I could always rely on her for wisdom. She's not only a lovely person, but she's also super smart and human, so learning along the way, but I always trusted what she said. So that's huge, I think, to have someone a mentor that you can trust with your secrets.
How long did you actually remain in that exact relationship where your relationship was defined by Natasha's dad and you being together?
Well, I have to credit Natasha with that. And thanks for all your lovely words, Natasha. I'm sure I'm purple by now. So I would say it was when Natasha was in her early 20s. She started to have conversations with me about the fact that we were best friends. Oh. And it was an interesting conversation for me because at the beginning, I didn't have a good reaction to that. I loved being her stepmother. Uh-huh. It was an important title to me or an important identity. Mm-hmm. So I was really uncomfortable, but it was important to her that we acknowledged that she was an adult. I think what the stepmother title was doing was making a lot of our conversations about my advice. Oh, right. And at some point, she didn't necessarily want advice. Mm-hmm. So she really wanted me to recognize that the relationship had shifted and that we were also really, really good friends.
So this kind of cracks me up because, Natasha, I've heard a body of thought that at some point you have to fire your parents. And that sounds harsh at first, but it's actually about becoming an adult and firing them from the role of parenting you so that you can relate to each other as adults. And it sounds like you fired Mary Jane.
Completely unconsciously. It was much later in life that I was more solid about, well, you do know that we're best friends, right? It was very unconscious that I was wiggling about in the stepmother, stepdaughter sort of roles. Because, yeah, I guess you bring that to light and bring that to my consciousness of, this is my stepmother, Mary Jane. This is my stepmother, Mary Jane. She's blah, blah, blah. Always saying that. But the truth is when one shares, intimately with another person, they become your best friend. And that's just how I saw it, that was more the truth of what it was. It went beyond a role of stepmother.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We couldn't share the great stories that we do here on the Canadian Love Map podcast without the amazing support of Charm Diamond Centers. They are Canada's largest family-owned jeweler, and they're proud to be putting love on the map. The folks at Charm Diamond Centers are thrilled to be a part of your love story. So visit charmdiamondcenters.com or one of your local stores. Love starts here. And at some point, Natasha's father left this picture. Is that right?
Yes. I don't know how long ago. I'm going to say more than 30 years ago.
Wow.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Natasha, how old were you, do you think, when they split?
Well, I would have been in my early 20s. She's referring to the early 20s and the lack of the stepmother,
Right.
moniker or role. But it was around that same time that they broke up. And that was devastating to me. It was more devastating to me than my own parents breaking up. With Mary Jane and my dad, there was such a happy, from our perspective, happy family relationship. So for them to break up was pretty traumatic. And that may unconsciously have had something to do, Mary Jane, with me embracing the best friend thing. I'm not sure. It wasn't something that I consciously decided.
Well, no, and we still use the moniker because when you meet us, when we're together, our relationship doesn't make sense if you don't know that that's where it started, because not that we're too intimate, but we'll say things to each other or do things for each other where it goes a little bit beyond friendship, if that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right.
Yeah.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, mother-daughter thing.
Yeah. Yeah, mother-daughter thing.
So how did your relationship shift after that breakup?
I'm going to say that it didn't, even though I was terrified that it would. It was hard enough to walk away from that relationship. And I remember, moving to a new apartment and thinking, what if I lose the girls? What if I lose the girls? I was just panicked in some respect. And I had a dinner party or something, and Natasha came, and she said, well, how silly that you would think that, right? That's what a silly thing to think. And both Natasha and Nina said that to me, and that was really helpful, right?
It was like out of the scope of possibility for them.
Yeah. Wow.
She was had such a firm foothold in our life that we didn't have a lot of reliable adults in our life, really. It wasn't devastating. I mean, we had a home and we had a smaller family, but we had family, but no one was reliable as an adult. Mary Jane was, looking back especially, was the only reliable adult. So yeah, there was no question that she was not going to stay in our life that would have been devastating.
Wow, you really got around that evil stepmother trope.
I did.
Especially because you were young. It's so easy to say, oh, well, yeah, she's this, or this.
True. Right. Well, I think Natasha's you've used the word fun, which I've never really thought about. But one of the things that we did together, which I'm going to share here, is we lived in Toronto. For a while, we lived in Kensington Market, which was fantastic. Mm-hmm. But the girls always needed new clothes for school and stuff like that. So back in the day, when Spadina was just full of the garment district and discounts and everything, that they would come and the three of us would just take the day and shop and shop and shop in all these holes in the wall, you know what I mean? Where there was no change room. You just grabbed something and tried it on over your clothes or whatever. And it was magic. We just had magic times together.
Well, and shopping wasn't a major deal in our world. So one birthday or Christmas, it said that I was going to get a shopping spree. And it was like I'd won the lottery just by the idea of what a shopping spree is. It just blew my mind. A shopping spree. What is that?
We have to say, do you remember the Michael Jackson earrings?
Well, I remember them, yes.
So, Natasha was so proud when she would go back to school and she would have clothes that were trendy, right? Because that was new, right? And it was, I guess, obviously it was the time when Michael Jackson was really, really popular. And we found Michael Jackson earrings somewhere. And she got to go back to school wearing these Michael Jackson earrings. And it was just like the bomb.
They were sparkly gloves.
That's right.
Gloves. Oh, really? Just the glove, the white glove?
Yeah, the sparkly white glove.
Oh, that's pretty special.
I don't remember having such a fondness for them, but I'm sure I did.
You were pretty excited, yeah.
Well, while I hear you describe that shopping trip or those shopping trips, I'm just sort of having this longing, like, where was I? Why was I not with you? It's right up my alley.
It was pretty fun, right? Because it wasn't fancy at all, right? You'd go in and sort through boxes of stuff and you'd find a corner in the back room to try things on and hold up a blanket or something. It was because you were shopping at the manufacturers. It was so fun.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's what made it such a fun experience.
Oh, yes.
That it was out of the box,
yes.
so to speak.
Yes.
Tell me about other ways in which you've stayed together and nurtured your relationship over the years, because it's been a while now.
Well, I think the most there's all kinds of important stories, but the most important one to me that highlights Natasha in a different way. So my husband was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's about 10 years ago. And so during
the husband, I'm sorry, just to clarify.
My current husband.
Okay, current husband. Yeah, got it.
My current husband. And at the start of the pandemic, I'm still working, but I've cut my hours and I'm taking care of him at home. And things are okay, but they're getting harder all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And Natasha introduces us to an app called Marco Polo. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Marco Polo is a video app. And you talk to the other person, not in real time, but you send them a message, but it's a video message. And we have, as a consequence, had the same conversation going for 4 years.
Wow.
And I can't describe what it meant to me, especially on days when I was awake at 3 a.m. or something, to just have this best friend that I could sneak downstairs and talk to about whatever I was going through. So one of the things that we've always been able to do is, and Natasha might have better language, hand things over to somebody. Mm-hmm. So you're expressing where you are without asking for help, just saying, I need to hand this over to you so that I'm not carrying it by myself. And we've always been able to do that in a back and forth way. So thank you for that, love.
Well, I would say you're turning it over to someone, but that's what you've done for my entire life. I've lived in a lot of places, as I may have said in the intro, moved a lot. So I haven't lived near Mary Jane for a very, very long time, just briefly off and on. And so she's been super consistent with phone calls. And she is the phone lady. So her consistency is remarkable. So she was holding space for me for decades. So with Marco Polo, I'm able to hold space for her. And with life being busier and busier as it is, Marco Polo allows for me to watch the videos at my convenience and for, vice versa. So we have found different ways, mostly the phone over the years. Mary Jane's also a very good letter writer and card sender. So no matter where I lived, she's really good at marking time with cards and phone calls, all different ways of communication in order to maintain a strong interaction, constant interaction.
What I see when you are describing that is that you are tethered, like you feel like you're tethered or anchored. Is that an apt description for what she's done for you?
Yeah, I think that's right. I do, having moved a lot, I always say home is wherever I live. And Mary Jane will say that coming to our house, whether it's California or otherwise, feels like home to her. So that was a revelation, I think, because she has, she is our family in this really unusual way, because her own family is fairly dispersed, but our home is her home no matter where we live. And I feel vice versa, when I'm at her home, which is rare nowadays because Halifax and California are very far apart. Yes. Geographically. So.
And by the hours as well. The other thing that we can share, of course, is that I was very honored and privileged to deliver Natasha's first child, Naya. Help deliver, I should say, or be there for the delivery. Maybe that's what I should say. Not that I helped deliver, but I was there when she arrived.
Really?
Yes. And I was supposed to be there for her second child, her son, Kale. He was super late and I had to get back to work. But
so tell me a little more about that, if you don't mind. And who would like to describe that experience and how it came about?
So my own mother is very emotional. So my husband and I didn't think we could cope with having her in the room because it's our space and we couldn't have it taken up by other emotions. Mm-hmm. So we were allowed to have one other person, and there's just no question that it would be Mary Jane. So we were honored to have her there. She is my husband and I have been together for 31 years, and so she's very much a part of, his family experience with us as well. So there's just no question she is family and is going to do those things that family does.
So what was the experience like for you, Mary Jane?
Oh, fantastic. What's fun to think about. So Naya is 18 now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when babies are born, you can kind of see who they're going to be.
Mm-hmm.
she arrived with her eyes like wide open, and it was like, get out of my way. And that's exactly who she still is. And I stayed a while, and then Jay drove me back to their house, and I cooked and cooked and cooked and filled their freezer and did a number of other things that you do when somebody's just had a baby.
But what was also amazing, one of those moments, is that Mary Jane got to see the transformation in my husband's face, literally, when he became a father. And that, that's such a special, remarkable moment in time. So to have her there during important moments, just bonds us tighter together.
Natasha, do you have friends who say, where do I get a Mary Jane?
I have heard, yes, everyone needs a Mary Jane in their life. That has, quote unquote, has been a discussion between friends and myself. Yes.
I want to go back for one sec, at the risk of sounding like it's an ad for Marco Polo, but I want to honor, Mary Jane, what you said about your current husband going through dementia or early dementia. And how has the Marco Polo relationship served you in a deeper way than texting?
It's the sound of the human voice, which I say not only as Mary Jane, but as the phone lady. The sound of our voices is what builds, maintains relationships. It's great to get a handwritten letter and all those things, but it's hard to express our emotions and what we're going through without that sound of voice behind what we're saying. Mm-hmm. And we both go through things where when we share them with the other, it's how we're telling the story. Mm-hmm. And the sound of our voices. And we're able to say, I don't need you to do anything. I just need you to listen, or whatever it might be. And some of them would be probably a little boring, right? Today I did this. I'm worried about that. I'm behind on this. Like, they're not all exciting,
and they're lengthy. They're much longer than a text. So it allows you to share much, much, much more visually and orally, more about your life.
And energetically.
And energetically. Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that is a supreme way to stay connected. The word connection, has so much meaning in our world today where there's so much disconnection.
Yes.
And the fact that you have stayed connected so long and so deeply is really beautiful. But you kind of specialize. I'm hearing what you're saying about being a phone lady. That's kind of your specialty. Is it not?
Yeah, I'm very, very passionate about our ability to communicate with each other. I'm fortunate in that the phone lady allows me to bring that into business spaces and not-for-profit spaces. But in general, the world would be better if we communicated better. And the idea of Marco Polo, too, there's a 4-hour time difference. Right? So that is part of it. And we all know how difficult it is to get somebody on the phone, even someone we love, right? Mm-hmm. What is their schedule? What are they doing right now? Should I call them now? Will I be interrupting them? And so Marco Polo gave us the freedom to have this 4-year conversation without looking at the time, without caring about what time it is, and knowing that the other person was going to listen and respond and on their time. Fred, but we do talk every day, sometimes many times in a day, and we still do.
True. So I've just come back from Hawaii, where, of course, they have volcanoes. And the metaphor for me is that you say you're not trying to have the other person solve your problem, but it is like letting off steam, because if a volcano doesn't let off steam, there's going to be a mess, and it's going to be destructive.
Yes. Tasha, I'll let you talk to that.
Well, it's a great point. I didn't recognize how important it was to Mary Jane when she was going through being a caregiver at home until she actually shared, by the way, this is really important to me, because the conversations can be mundane. They can be about, what you had for lunch. But it was really important to her. And for me, she's always been there for me during conundrums. To be able to share with a best friend like that with such immediacy as well, because it is so difficult to, you have something happening in the moment and people are not there when you need them, and by no fault of their own. And so Marco Polo has been very remarkable for our relationship.
Absolutely.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, absolutely.
And did that metaphor resonate with you as the person who really needed to vent?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my husband is now in care, and so things are slightly different. But when he was at home and things were getting more difficult, I would just need to share that and talk a little bit maybe about grief or frustration or whatever it is. And fear, lots goes into those difficult caregiving years. But at the same time, there's lots of stages in our lives that are difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Has there been an interesting range of reactions from people looking at your relationship, especially when the family was still intact and you had really made it quite seamless?
Oh, yes.
I thought you might say that. Tell me more.
Well, Natasha might not know it because I don't know that I shared it with her, but there was a friend early on who criticized the children, and that was the end of that friendship. I'm done. She didn't get it, right? They're my daughters, so you don't. Yeah, and I mean, I remain close with Natasha's sister, Nina, as well. It's just a different level of communication. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Natasha, for you, did your friends, when the family was still intact and you were all living in the same house, did your friends find that weird? Because the world has very specific ideas about what divorce looks like, and it ain't good.
So as a stepmother, that was easy for people to digest. As a young person saying, this is my stepmother, that needed no explanation. And then when they met her, they understood. And I still have friends to this day from that phase of life. So they they wanted a Mary Jane in their life. It was only in my mid-20s that Mary Jane and I had a mutual friend. And she was kind of the first one that said to me, your relationship is weird. Yeah, I don't, I can't even remember exactly how she said it, but she called it out that, well, she's your stepmother, but she's not, blah, blah, blah. And she just felt really uncomfortable with it. And it's just like, well, okay. But admittedly, I do now, and for years, I say, Mary Jane is my stepmother and my best friend and my mentor. And that helps sort of paint a picture for people. This is who she is. She's very special. She's not just my mentor. She's my stepmother. She's not just my stepmother. She's my best friend. So that just opens their mind and we move on.
That's an extraordinary description.
Yes, it is. Wow. Thank you, sweetie.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Natasha, you've said some beautiful things already about MJ, but what do you love most about this woman sitting beside me?
Well, her effort in earnestly having a conversation and earnestly doing the best she can as a human has paid off in spades. So what we all say, oh, we should volunteer. Mary Jane volunteers. Oh, we should keep in touch. Mary Jane keeps in touch. Oh, we should have that conversation. You'll be darn tootin', we're going to have that conversation. She's very tenacious about her, and rightly so, and she's not righteous about it necessarily. It's just she's this really good person. And she's helped me grow to be a very good person, I think. I don't know if I would be such a good person without her. That's the truth.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to say.
It is. I must be. I don't know what color. Thank you, darling. But now it's even, right? So Natasha helps me be a better version of me. And it has been that way for quite some time, because if Natasha's very good at being very direct and not setting boundaries, but saying, this isn't working for me. And because of our relationship, I don't take that personally. I actually learn from it. Mm-hmm. Whereas with other people, you might say, who are you to say that to me? But our relationship is strong enough that all of that just is learning and growing and being together as adults and wanting to make sure that our relationship gets stronger all the time, right?
And what do you love most about this voice actor that we're looking at in a booth in California?
Well, there isn't anything I don't love about her.
Oh.
My life would not be the same without her in it at all.
I think that's a mic drop moment. Shall we drop the mic?
Indeed.
Yes.
Yes, because there are too many tears to continue.
I'm swallowing them. I am.
Verklempt is the word that pops into my mind.
That's it. Yeah.
I can't thank you both enough, really.
Thank you.
What a beautiful story and just inspiring for a lot of people.
Good.
Well, we're glad to be able to do that. It's been a wonderful opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to the Canadian Love Map. This podcast is presented and made possible by Charm Diamond Centers. It's hosted by me, Nancy Regan, and is produced and distributed by Podstarter. We love sharing love stories of all kinds, and that could include yours. So do you or someone you know have an uplifting tale to tell? Reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram using @CanadianLoveMap or email producer@podstarter.io. We'll be back next week with another love story to add to the map.